Here, an inlay goes inside the tooth, so it is called as an intracoronal restoration. Onlay sits over the tooth, covers the cusps, usually is an onlay, and a crown is something that covers the entire surface of the tooth completely. Another terminology here is a die. Die is a positive replica of the tooth. After the impression is made in an impression material, we pour the cast and we make a die like this. This is the die of a central incisor, and the cuts that you are seeing here, this phenomenon is called as a die cutting procedure. So you want to isolate this tooth and take this out. There is a pin which supports and holds this in position so that this tooth can be taken out and it can be worked upon for giving it desirable shape, size to future restoration which is being planned. The wax work becomes easy. Why these indirect restorations are done? Indirect restorations are done to enhance an operator, to have more control over the contours, contact, surface characteristics, and all other details of the restoration. Here is a tooth colored partial onlay, you can say, and or inlay, you can say, and here is a die of an upper molar, and this is the restoration which is made. So like this, you can have a lot of convenience of working. These are the examples of dies for fixed partial denture. If you can see, this is called as a die pin. This is called as a die. These teeth go right in these slots which are prepared. So the base will have these slots and the pins goes in place so that you can take the tooth out, work on it. These are very basic things which sometimes are asked in vivas, but students go blank and they do not answer. And what is expected from you in inlay especially is only the basics of the inlay procedures. And plus beyond that. Steps in cast restorations. Here if you see, clinically, there is a molar and there is a cavity here. There are caries in the mesial surface of the tooth. There is a cavity prepared at the next step, a class 2 with a box and occlusal preparation here. In inlay cavity, the next step is to obtain a wax pattern. A wax pattern is made with the help of pattern wax. Pattern wax is a chapter in dental material which are all of us are aware of. Here what we do, we fill the entire cavity with the molten wax. After we fill it completely, we carve it out to give it a desirable shape of the restoration. After the desirable shape of the restoration is given, that piece of wax, that assembly of wax is called as a wax pattern. Now what we do with that pattern, we take out that pattern from the cavity and we mount it on a sprue former or a sprue. All of you must be knowing about the sprue here. This is a reservoir, this is a sprue, and this is called as crucible former or base of the crucible here. Now coming to the lab steps involved, see the wax pattern on the tooth is taken out and it is mounted with this sprue here, with the reservoir here and with the sprue base. This assembly goes into casting ring. This is the casting ring, and now here sits your crucible former, sprue and your pattern, and this area surrounding it inside the tube is filled with investment material. Now this investment material, when it sets initially, this whole casting ring goes into an oven or a burnout furnace which has a temperature of 400 and later on taken up to 650 degrees Celsius depending on the procedure. With the help of the burnout furnace temperature, the entire assembly of wax, see this area was wax, this sprue was made up of wax, and this whole pattern was a wax, so this melts and comes out from here. Either it can melt in the form of a liquid and fell down, or the remaining amount of traces gets converted into a gaseous state. After this entire burnout process has happened, this now becomes a hollow space. This hollow space is now called as a mold because this has the exact shape of the pattern which was placed. After the mold is prepared, we infuse or we introduce molten metal into this mold which goes down here and starts solidifying. And you know the reservoir's job is to keep on supplying the metal as the metal keeps on solidifying and having its shrinkage. This continuously supplies the metal and the reservoir prevents localized shrinkage porosity. Then after this molten metal goes inside and forms a casting, it is quenched, means a very hot casting ring is immediately placed in normal room temperature water. The quenching leads to crackage because of the high temperature of the investment material here. It cracks and we take out the casting. This is called as unfinished casting, or we commonly in layman terms we normally call it as raw casting. After the raw casting comes out, we clean it and we cut off the sprue. After we cut off the sprue, we do finishing, sandblasting, polishing, and other stuff. And the casting, once ready, is brought to the mouth again, at first on the model naturally, to check its fit and completeness or any other casting defects, and then it comes into the oral cavity and it is tried for. If it fits everywhere well, all the margins are good, all the fit is good, contours are good, contacts are good, then we do cementation. Before cementation, we take a radiographic picture to see whether the extent is proper or not, especially in class 2 cases. That's how clinically and laboratory steps are involved into an inlay. These are a few examples of the these are the pictures, a few pictures of the castings. Class 1 compound, MOD along with an extension. This is a cast. Now, topic of the day is class 1 cast gold inlay restoration. If you want to contemplate what you are going to make in the exam, definitely not this step, but ultimate objective and goal of your work is to generate or to make a restoration which looks like this, an occlusal class 1 cast gold inlay. Now, coming back to the basics of restorative dentistry again, search for an ideal restorative material has been eternal. If you go to the books of history of dentistry, there are interesting findings there. Divine smokes were earlier used to cure toothache and to stop the decay of the tooth. Magical waters and potions, we have detailed formulas intention. Stones were used. Stones were grinded into small sizes and inserted into the cavity. Lead was filled. Animal excreta was used. Cow dung is commonly used. Droppings of the British arrow was used. Wood was a favorite phenomenon. Still, there are tribes in the world who use bamboo stick wood to fill the cavities and replace missing teeth. Human teeth were used. All of you must have listened to the stories about the Waterloo battle. So the Battle of Waterloo, a lot of soldiers died. So people went on extracting the teeth of the dead bodies and they brought it into the market and they were branded as Waterloo teeth. So those teeth were ground into small sizes and used as restorations and even for tooth transplantation, which was a scientific procedure in that time. Animal teeth commonly were used. Fish bones and teeth were used to restore teeth. Hot modal wettons and alloys were poured into the cavity. If the tooth is hurting, suppose if the person is having pulpitis, inflammation of the pulp, hot modal metal was poured into the cavity of the tooth directly. So that one sudden severe pain to that person and it used to necrotize the pulp completely. So this necrosis would lead to death of the pulp and immediate elevation of all the symptoms. And the people used to feel that they have cured it. Pure gold. Now on the left side were all historical remedies which were very brutal. On the right side, I have mentioned the modern restorative materials, amongst which pure gold was first and foremost restorative material and practiced for decades or centuries together. Then came ceramics, alloyed gold, silver amalgam, cements, composites, bioceramics, and today we talk about nanomaterials and nanorobots. Even though we have so many other restorative materials at our disposal, why does your syllabus still contain cast gold? Because cast gold has its own advantages, has its own charm and beauty, which we will see in future. In the slide to come. Here is a case which I have taken from the internet about direct filling gold restorations. You must have read this chapter already. So gold. Why gold? Gold is supposed to be one of the most noble metals we have. Rather, it is the most noble metal we have. If you have seen in your own families, even if you have some golden ornaments in the family which have run for generations together, they will not lose the luster, they will not lose the color, they will not be corroded, they will not be deformed. So, beauty of the gold is lack of tarnish and corrosion, its nobility, its acceptance by the tissues is very good. And top of it is the high cultural acceptance to the golden color. That was the basic advantage. Everyone used to prefer direct filling gold restorations, but problem with the use of pure gold is that it's poor mechanical performance. Poor mechanical performance means its hardness is very, very low. Reynolds hardness number for gold is 2.5, whereas your ceramics or glass may have the hardness beyond 600. So that less hardness it has. Dimensional stability under heavy stress is very low. If you have 24 carats gold ornament in the house, try and bend them. You can bend them in no time with hardly any force. And one more major roadblock is thermal conductivity. Though taken care of by the luting at times, but definitely it is a clinical problem with the direct filling gold. So cast gold alloys are referred as universal restorative materials, and there is no true contraindication for their clinical use. That is why the gold alloys were used. Gold alloys were used. Now, cast gold alloy restorations, their historical survival in the clinical practice is contributed by why cast gold alloys are still used and why cast gold restorations are still in the books and are being taught. High finishing and polishing, they achieve a very, very beautiful, very smooth surface of polishing. Resistance to tarnish and corrosion, as we have explained, content is predominantly gold, so it does not take any tarnish and corrosion. Many of the restorations will tarnish and will corrode in the mouth. Biocompatibility of the gold and is unquestionable. Cohesive properties is very good, so we can have a ductility as well as malleability. Traditional acceptance of the gold color, richness and harmony of the color with the oral tissue. Somehow, with the oral tissues, gold color has a natural compatibility or camouflage and long service record. This has been used for more than 100 years, so we have a very long track record of gold and gold alloys. But it's used in the clinical practice today, you find it very minimal. If you ask 100 dentists in a country today how many are doing, hardly anybody is doing cast gold restorations at direct. The reasons being the objectionable color. Today, a lot of patients demand tooth colored restorations. Secondly, it's not a conservative approach. Cavity preparation required for cast gold restoration is slightly more. Cutting of the tooth is slightly more, so it is a less conservative option. Casting shrinkage has to be overcome every time you plan and execute a cast gold restoration. That's another roadblock. Accuracy of restoration will depend upon the technician. Meaning what? You are not making the restoration yourself, but you are relying upon a technician to work on it. So the steps involved are more. You make an impression that has to, first of all, tooth preparation requires a very high skill. It's a very, very skillful job. Secondly, you need to make a correct impression or a pattern of the cavity. Then it has to be poured correctly, a correct dye has to be prepared. Then the technician has to prepare an appropriate wax pattern. It has to be casted more accurately, then finished and polished more accurately. If any of the step you go wrong in the entire process. So technique sensitivity and accuracy depends on a lot of steps. That is why it is a little bit lengthier procedure to fabricate a restoration as compared to your direct restorations. Multiple visits are required because first stage you go for preparation, then you make impressions, send it to the lab, it comes back from the lab, and if you find it good, you cement it. If you don't find it good, you want the lab people to modify something, you send it back to the lab. Lab works on it again, makes you a new restoration, it comes back to you, you check it again in the mouth. So it may involve 2 visits or at times even more than 2 visits. Then it's a complex procedure overall, and gold is very, very costly today. Secondly, as the lab is involved, as impression is involved, as dye making is involved, material cost also goes ahead. So human resources as well as material cost is very high. Now, coming back to the definitions proper of indirect restorations. First is inlay, second is partial onlay, third is onlay. These 3 descriptions or definitions should be known to you before you appear for exam. Inlay essentially is an intracoronal restoration which restores occlusal and proximal surfaces of teeth. Remember, it is not involving the cusps of the teeth. If suppose you get an examiner who's very, very senior, very old books described inlay as those restorations which restore occlusal, proximal surfaces of the teeth along with a few cusps but never all the cusps. Okay? A few cusps but not all the cusps. But in all the recent books, the definition is being changed. It has come to inlay intracoronal restoration which restores occlusal and proximal surface of the teeth. And partial onlay is a restoration which may cap one or more but never all the cusps. So your partial onlay is a restoration which may involve occlusal, proximal and a few cusps but never all the cusps. The moment your cast restoration involves or covers all the cusps, it is called as an onlay. So I hope I'm making myself very clear without confusing you. Repeating the thing again. Inlay is a restoration which goes and fits inside the tooth. It is called as intracoronal restoration. Intracoronal means it goes within the crown of the tooth, obtains whole retention from the tooth itself, from inside of the tooth. Okay, and onlay which sits over a tooth. It sits like a cap, it sits like a crown, and it covers all the cusps. It's an onlay. A partial onlay would be a cusp restoration which may not cover all the cusp, it's a partial only. Now, here is a picture on the right side. If you see, this is a class 2 inlay. It covers occlusal and proximal. This is a partial only. It covers the distobuccal, the palatal, both, but not this cusp completely. Here is again the similar onlay here, and here is a complete crown.